thing. So again, if you look at the title, we are talking about being quote too fashionable and how to move beyond basics. It's a very broad topic. I'm sure it'll take up the whole time, and I'm sure it'll come back in future streams and future podcasts. But and of course, this is related to a lot of different stuff because if you watched us last weekend, we talked about how to incorporate trends, how to find out whether something is right for you. So this is all very related, and an ongoing thing when you're into menswear like we are. You suffer from this, debilitating disease, I should call it. But anyway, so there was I'm going to post the link here in the chat, but you can take a look here. So it's by this guy named User Eat Shit Pal, which is a great name. Great name. But the title says, all right, I'll bite. The sub is almost dead. Let's talk about some fucking suits, motherfuckers. Now, unfortunately, the main body of text of his post is gone, so we can only look back at what our commentary was because, again, actually, not again, we have a Discord, and if you are a patron, you get to be in the Discord, and we talked about it earlier today on the Discord in the chat, so this is unfortunately, the only kind of history we have for it, unless we look it up on, like, some
the Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine, but he kind of talked about how MFA is almost dead because people, even though it has 2.4 million members, it's not really active. And again, MFA, MaleFashionAdvice, one of the biggest online communities for menswear or men's fashion, I should say. Every once in a while, I'm an active member. Kiyoshi's on it. Every once in a while, people will say, "Oh, why is everything being so fashionable? What's going on? Why aren't there the same? Why isn't there as much relatable content or whatever?" And so that was kind of what he was posting about. And he goes, "You know what? Fuck that. I'm going to talk about suits, even though suits are something people don't really wear anymore," which is kind of true in a sense. I mean, Kiyoshi has got. I mean, we could talk about the word death or whatever, but like Kiyoshi has had different instances of talk, and I'm sure we all have talking about with other people about if menswear, classic menswear is dead, people aren't wearing suits as much, people aren't wearing ties anymore, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, his post was kind of about that and about how a couple of brands that he likes, and he posted about like Brooks Brothers, Lardini, Canali, and talked about wearing expensive suits because sometimes you gotta feel good in an expensive suit as opposed to something from the mall. And
what mall are you going to where you're buying Canali?
South Coast Plaza.
South Coast Plaza. That's Spencer's Mall has a Canali in it, and a Brioni, and a Fashionable, and SLP and everything. So it's a luxury mall.
And poor.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't shop there. I don't shop there.
None of us shop there. Yeah, but that's just kind of where it's at. But anyway,
people even know where they are. That's the level of poverty he's at.
Yeah.
And a couple of things here. I mean, Kiyoshi, why don't you you had something on there, but why don't you tell us about your response to the brands that were listed, because you kind of wrote about that in the chat.
So you're
Kiyoshi?
Oh,
are you there?
Sorry, I have a hard time hearing.
Don't worry.
Yeah. So no. Anyway, so I think one of the ideas of like you hear this thing come up again and again when you read enough menswear blogs and menswear articles, especially from people that are, I wouldn't say starting their journey, but they're kind of maybe a little bit into it, and usually that first step is within tailoring. But this idea of, you don't want to focus on fashion, you don't want to focus on, runway stuff, you don't want to focus on trends. And I am very, very guilty of having the same mentality as well. And I kind of wish people would stop, especially men would stop parroting that idea that being fashionable is necessarily bad. Because I feel like saying I don't want to be seen as fashionable is like saying you are scared of receiving a compliment from someone saying, "Oh, you look rather fashionable," or "That's a fashionable person." Because I think maybe a better way to discuss the idea of being fashionable is, coolness, for lack of better words. And who doesn't want to be cool? Mm-hmm. Or maybe conversely, do you want to look like a dork? And I think the answer to that is, you don't want to be. And everyone wants to be cool, and there's different ways to be cool. That's kind of what makes fashion as an industry and as a hobby or interest kind of exciting is that
right.
it is it's good to have like the basic premises of style and just kind of like color coordination and how things fit, but to really make a unique statement about yourself through your clothing, where fashion can be a reflection on your interests, the things you care about, the subcultures that you participate in, and also at the same time, a reflection of where you are within the larger culture in general, within society, and how willing you are or unwilling you are to be a part of these different things. And I think people really do themselves a disservice when they say, I don't want to be fashionable, because fashion is, even if you make a choice not to be quote unquote fashionable or on trend, it's still a choice, and that is still a point of view about the visual language of how you present yourself to others. And I think if more people embrace fashion, and the fact that fashion, yes, does change over time, that would also free you up to, with your personality, with your opinions, with your interests, change as well. Because I think nobody really should be the same exact person that they were the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we are able to live a life where we're more enriched and we're more experienced, and we have discovered things that we want to take part in our lives. And I look back, 10 years, 2010 or whatever, 5 years of 2015, and I'm happy to say I'm different in a lot of ways, and I'm still consider myself me. And my interests, just outside of clothes, obviously too, have changed. So I think being interested in fashion shouldn't be this like dirty kind of thing,
right.
A stigma that is, I guess in a toxic sense, just for women or just for, guys that aren't straight. I kind of feel like anyone who's interested in self-growth and culture should be interested in fashion, because it shows like just a willingness to change and become a different person and express yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so for some context here, the comments on that post about that Jeremy has so wonderfully put the original content of that thing in there. It mainly focuses on suits, but the last part was talking about suiting and how it's going away. And the comments on it are what we're talking about here with what Kyoshi's saying is that like people are wondering what happened with MFA and how it's moving into this whole like everything is so fashionable and everything is so trendy. What happened to the old stuff? And a lot of it is people are often scared of those things, or even not just wary but antagonistic, because as Kyoshi said, they don't like being fashionable. They want to stay in this thing forever. And when you look at these comments on that post, from the first the first comment that everyone kind of like latched onto was that idea of classic clothing and being timeless, because a lot of them say, hey, when I was first here in 2015, 2016, which again is kind of like the midway point, which is when a lot of regular people get into it, of like the whole heritage slim fit suit movement. Right? Like, I mean, if you want to say it started like 2007, 2009 with like the bloggers and Mad Men and everything, you could say maybe, a couple of years after that is when it started getting mainstream, right? It takes fashion and the mainstream audience a little bit of time to catch up. And so, of course, if you get into MFA at that time, it's going to be all about wearing Clark's desert boots, fucking OCBDs, white sneakers, stuff like that. And then, as time has moved on now, as the sub gets bigger, same thing, we talk about this also with Styleform as well, that Kiyoshi said in our Discord, is that eventually you're going to have this demographic shift of new people getting into this thing that maybe old people were a part of, right? And if it's MFA, you get a lot of new people wanting to dress up. And the thing is, like Kiyoshi said, if you're into culture, you're into art, you tend to evolve. Your tastes change. Artists change, music changes, and so, you know, you no longer have to be beholden to what it was before. And all these guys have this kind of, they want it to be slim fit jeans, great crew neck sweaters, and the thing is that's fine.
Well, I think it's a very like Reddit mentality to kind of get into fashion with the expectation. It's like, okay, I'll keep leveling up my fashion points until I reach 100, and then I'm good. And it's like
all the karma.
Yeah, it's like I'll figure out what clothes are good, and then I never have to buy any more clothes again.
Exactly.
As Ethan saying, as Ethan says though, it's an art form in a way, clothes, and as with all other art forms, it's constantly evolving. Mm-hmm. So you're never going to get to 100. It's not like it's not like a big band lead in the 30s just perfecting the big band sound, whatever that is, and just saying, okay, that's it for me, I'm done, and complaining when the 50s and 60s roll around and you get rock and roll. I guess what I'm thinking is I don't have any problem with guys wanting a forum for basic stuff, but then just start another subreddit. That's not what MFA
is. The basic stuff of right now is not going to be the basic stuff in 2 years, 5 years.
You know, and the thing is,
you can't go to the subreddit that's pushing the culture forward and expect them and ask them why aren't they basic.
Right.
And
I wouldn't say that MFA is pushing the culture forward, but I mean,
overall, it is technically a beginner subreddit. Yeah. But I mean, like what Jason said, the basics of a few years ago are the basics now. And the basics now won't be the basics of 5 years from now. Yeah, and I think that's what it is too.
2010
basic. Jason, you hit on this where it's, we talk about that's classic. It is. Don't get me wrong. It is classic. A Breton stripe tee with like chino shorts and white sneakers. Classic. I mean, you could see variations of that. Back in the 50s or whatever. You could see it today and probably in a couple of years. But the thing is, that inherently has been a look that will stay forever. So you don't need constant articles, you don't need constant influencers, and you especially don't need constant inspo albums of those pictures of people wearing that, because it's the same thing. So obviously, after a while, it's going to be stagnant. So these people who have this idea of everything should be standard and basic and everything, it's still there. It's just not the news. Right? Your 21st birthday party was great, but we're not going to talk about it when you're 25, right? We're going to celebrate your 25th birthday. The pictures of your 21st we finally can share every once in a while.
A lot of people who share a lot of 21st birthday vibes.
Right.
But I guess for me, the issue would be I don't have any problem with someone who's actually new to the forum coming in and saying, "Hey, I don't see any basic fits here," and in that case, well, then that guy there should be, if there doesn't exist already, a subreddit for new guys to share those basic fits and actually learn those basic fits because they don't actually know it to begin with. But where I have a problem though is
sidebar of like the MFA Reddit. They have sidebar like guides for newbies. Yeah. Like
I don't know if this is the discussion that. I mean, the most the most illuminating discussion to have, because I think we're just talking about right now about what we think that the Reddit male fashion advice subreddit should be. Hey, welcome, young Chomsky, presumably using the TrueAnon Twitch. Thank you for joining us.
Well, so that Spencer, you bring up a good topic. So again, we're talking about that aspect of it, and again, the big complaint about the reason why people don't like moving forward isn't that just because it's timeless and whatever. It's what Kiyoshi was talking about, it being too fashionable. And if I can speak a little bit on like my point of view on that whole thing, is that they are intimidated by things that are non-traditional, right? Like this could be anything from like a wide fit pant to a high-rise trouser to even a fucking like a polo shirt that has like a spread collar to I don't know what's something else like a fucking like white socks and loafers. There's a lot of stuff that puts them off on it. It doesn't have to always be wide fit, but anything that's not classic or like a fitted khaki chino short with white sneakers, it's inherently too fashionable for them. But the thing is, I don't think it is too fashionable, because
that was fashionable in 2010. I think they have a hard time
seeing that,
and they see that as, oh, this is just traditional menswear. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
tradition. It's only tradition's only what was 10 years ago.
Right. And I think that a little bit of it could be, a lot of the big complaints come from, I live in a small town, I live in like fucking a flyover state or in a rural whatever,
I mean,
and I can't wear that without being noticed.
And this is something that you talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what about it? What do you mean?
Well, no, that you get that response to like when you post your like articles and stuff. People will say it's
I can't wear this.
Yeah, it's like I can't wear this. It's like this would never be acceptable at my job or my part of the country or whatever.
And don't wear it.
Do whatever you want.
Well, I think the thing is, a lot of these stuff you could definitely wear because I don't think people look at people's clothes that closely. I mean, maybe if you're older, maybe if you work, because obviously context matters. Like I said, all of us here have a very menswear mindset. 3 of us or a couple of us work in the menswear industry or at least related to it, so that that can apply a little bit to our choices. Yeah. But overall, it's weird how it goes both ways. Where when we're wearing a suit, let's say, either you're being noticed, like either you're being super fashionable, or you're a fucking old man who was in the past. Like you can't. It's like you're simultaneously both ends of weird to these people.
I think people do notice color and pattern, but that might be basically about it. Like no shade to some of our IRL friends, but I mean we have one friend who's like, he's like, the suits that I buy for work can't be too casual because I would stand out too much. And I think that if you're wearing a navy soft-shouldered suit, like no
one's gonna know.
Yeah, exactly.
Lapels, I want to be looked at in the street. No one fucking cares.
No one's gonna notice.
People understand it doesn't matter because I mean, if you're wearing a navy worsted suit, it's
exactly.
Is that enough of something to point out and say, "Hey, you're underdressed today. You should have worn a structured navy suit."
That's the craziest part. Everyone is so scared about being too fashionable. People are gonna notice me. But does that even really happen? I mean, maybe on here, like again on a fashion subreddit where my outfits are being up against OCBDs and Clark Jensen boots and like maybe like a high fashion thing, I'll stand out in that regard. People might go, "Hey, what the fuck does this guy do for a living?" or whatever. But if I'm out on the street, no one fucking cares, man. I can walk around my neighborhood. No one's gonna care. Yeah. And I think that it's just people projecting this idea of like, well, I don't want to be noticed, but it's like, well, what? Like
I'm from a city of 20,000 people.
Oh well, yeah. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm from I'm not from New York City. I'm from a city that's barely considered a city. It's 20,000 people, right? And I was just there, over the weekend. And it's like I still wore what I wore, and no one said anything. No one cares. Who cares? I walked into like a CVS in a suit with a Hawaiian shirt, on. Like no one cared. No one said a goddamn thing.
Well, people not saying anything and people caring, they're separate.
If they didn't say anything, then why am I to think that they care?
Yeah. Perfect point, Jason. Exactly. If they're not saying anything, who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
Like if you're not in
well, the argument
is if dress coded, then it doesn't matter.
Well, the argument is that there may be some future. You might have some future actions with people. So let's say you were really overdressed to like a university lecture or something. There'd be if you were really overdoing it, there'd be guys going around maybe with some impression that he's the campus conservative. I'm not going to talk to him or something like that.
That's
unlikely and it shouldn't happen.
It's unlikely.
It might happen. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, because
what were you saying, Hal?
Agreed. Hal, go ahead.
It's hilarious because you use that example of like walking into a university lecture in a suit, and I used to be that guy because a lot of times, like.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of us overdressed, yeah.
Well, I mean, like I usually like ended up going to work before or after class, so I would be like, I'll show up my suit, go to a lecture, and then go back to work. And I mean, it really boils down. Like, I mean, do I really care if people think it's like, he's wearing a suit, or maybe he has an interview today? I mean, it doesn't really affect my day to day. I still see my same mates and talk to the professors or whatever research I'm doing. I mean, so I suppose it really just boils down into if you feel secure enough to be like, it doesn't matter.
I mean, you're 100% correct because we talked about this in the whole context stream, which I think I highlighted. I hope I did. If not, we're gonna have to redo it. I'm just kidding. Right. But I mean, this kind of applies here, where yeah, obviously, if you're, say you're at college and maybe you have a class with a bunch of people that you want to hang out with after school, or you have a date afterward, maybe you want to, change how you dress based on those activities. But of course, if you have a fucking job interview or if you're going to work afterward, it doesn't matter what other people think because you have yourself to think about, right? Like, why take time out of your day to change and everything? And I think that's what's super important because, it doesn't matter what other people think at the end of the day because you have your own life, you have your own context. And if you're dressed to make yourself feel not just better, but like mentally and for your own confidence, but like literally that's what you have to wear to work afterward, then who the fuck cares, right? I mean, that's also like the mark of a good dresser where you don't really care what other people kind of think or say. And of course, whenever we have this whole thing, whenever people post outfits, on these subreddits or fashion communities, all the people say I couldn't wear that to work. Like, that's assuming that we're dressing, saying "fuck you" to everybody. that we're living in this, like we're living without context. But a lot of us, no, I think 100% of us know what our lives are. None of us could be fucking like, none of us work in like a finance thing or as a lawyer. And I'm sure that the lawyer or on software or whatever would dress accordingly. Like, oh, this guy wearing a white fit, cropped pants and a camp collar shirt that's also white fit got to the top of MFA. Like, what the hell? What's going on here? Well, he's like a fucking engineer, and engineers don't care what other engineers wear, so it doesn't fucking matter. Like we're always taking in context as much as possible. But lookers are weird.
Lookers
and yeah.
I mean,
like Jeremy brings up like, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny because like when you say like, oh, if you're this profession, you should wear this, right? I mean, I don't. Sorry, I'm like eating my words right now, but like what I'm trying to say is like I don't understand why a lot of people try to, I want to find a profession where I wear this so that I can wear this on my daily. It's like it doesn't.
No, that's bullshit.
You can just do that. You can wear it on the daily.
Exactly. It's and kind of tying back to my example of me going to class, like in a suit before work. Like for me, going to work in a suit is really just that uniform because in the office that was the dress code. I mean, it just so happens that I'm interested in suits, but let's say if the dress code for work was like a coverall, I would still wear that because that's my work uniform. But that doesn't dictate what I wear on my free time. If I have a class on Wednesday and I don't have work that day. Just because I work in that environment doesn't mean I can't show up in like, a polo shirt and like a blazer, And I realized after kind of like introducing myself to, new people meeting and after class and professors, like, sometimes you get remarks, but after that initial meeting, nobody really cares, they'll still hang out with you, and if they really don't want to, they're not.
Yeah.
To be clear, guys, in case I was misunderstood, I think in the grand scheme of things, clothing really doesn't matter. It won't affect your future or your future actions. It pretty much won't have an effect. But I think it might have a bit more effect than you guys might give it credit for. I might be so. Yeah, that's my position, and it goes to what I was saying.
I think it depends on the context. I think a lot of times in Southern California, especially, and I mean, a lot of the world, if you are the only person wearing a suit or sport coat, people will notice, and people will likely make, maybe a snap judgment about you.
I don't think it's all important.
Obviously, we try not to think about too much. We try to dress for ourselves, obviously. But I think, I don't know, was the post, because I skimmed it while I was out today, but I didn't get to read the full post like in depth before it was removed. Was he talking about? Did he like make any complaints about like the casual wear on the subreddit, or was he? Did he just talk about suits?
His point was his point.
The commenters saying that.
Yeah, he was basically saying that he was talking about his suits, and he was sharing it because he felt it would be sad if, as the casualness of the world goes on with COVID and everything, that we would lose appreciation for tailoring.
Who cares? We like it. I don't care right away.
Yeah, hey, MJ's back.
I get no appreciation anyway.
So Jeremy brings up a good point here in the comments. Don't people dress for people to notice it? And then later on he says, it's kind of a little bit of both, where some guys dress to be noticed, to indicate something on MFA. Sometimes you get like a trans person wanting to dress a certain way to signal their sexuality or what they're interested in. So some people definitely do dress within the intent to be noticed, but he also says a lot of people dress to kind of blend in.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it kind of goes, and of course, Ivan's talking also in the chat about, wearing clothes to his standards because he likes vintage menswear, right? Like, that's always going to be a thing there, too. But there's, again, to go back to the example of being too fashionable, it also applies not just for, like, wearing suits, but, like, trying a trend out, which is interesting. And I think even then people don't really fucking care because I think everyone wears sneakers, right?
Yeah.
Everyone,
For real.
Dress shoes are in the minority in this whole thing, but then the fact that you're wearing like a sneaker with like a trouser, like, whoa, that's so fashionable. Like, what the fuck? What's the difference? You're just swapping out the pants, or whatever.
Yeah, right. It's just not jeans.
People wear, like, dads wear camp collar shirts all the time. Might not be a good one, but dads do wear it. And then all of a sudden now people are wearing it, like younger people are wearing it. Like, whoa, can't do that. That's crazy.
Did we already
crazy.
have like a discussion about? While I was playing the game. About how weird a statement it is to say something is like too fashionable, or just kind of break down what that might mean.
No, go ahead. You can tell us what you think it means. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's like the two ways that I interpret it, and it's like, well, I guess these are the only two ways I can interpret it where I would say it's like, yeah, I guess that's a bad thing. Is one, if you're like those hype beast teenagers that we love to make fun of. Like, fucking...
I'm right here.
Yeah, like head to toe and like, all baped out. Or someone who doesn't really have their own style because they're just like wearing whatever they see on the mannequin. Like every time they go into the store, they see what's on the mannequin or they ask what's popular and they just buy that.
Isn't that guy a straw man though?
But no, I don't think many of those people exist. So once again, I think it's a weird statement to say that something is too fashionable.
Yeah, it definitely is because, yeah, good find, MJ. And it goes back to what Kiyoshi was saying earlier. Like, people are afraid of that word because, it entails.
Well, it's going back to the fucking swag is for boys, class is for men.
Oh yeah,
like style, fashion is for boys, style is for men, whatever.
So what I was saying is
the definition of body, though.
People are scared of the word fashionable because one indicates.
We're getting some audio glitches from
you're trying to stand out, and people are
cut off. Yeah.
Oh no!
But I think you just sound a little bit robot-y, but I think we mostly got his point, right?
Okay, I think I'm back now. I'm back, right?
Yeah, you sound better.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. Oh. Okay. So what I was saying is, it's either number one, they are going to, they are standing out, or number two, they are going to, they look like they're paying too much attention to clothes, which is a little too weird, which is what you said.
Well, I don't know. When I first started getting interested in fashion, like middle school or early high school, whatever. At first I was kind of, I don't know. I wasn't looking forward to the extra attention that just comes with going from not caring about how you're looking at all to suddenly caring about how you're looking. Because I think, people do notice that, and I don't know. I've never been one that really likes to be like the center. I don't know. I have like ADHD. I take compliments weird. So I don't like being the center of attention.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that same way, except at the same time, I do want people to notice me. I don't want people to say they notice me or like talk to me.
Because it's like, I think I dress well, but I think that I don't know. It's like I think I dress well, but it's like, and I don't know about anyone else in here, but at least most of my outfits I don't think get like noticed too much. Like today, I thought this was a really good outfit. I'm wearing some unique pieces, like the jacket is cropped or whatever. I have a long collar. It's a pullover shirt. I have patch pocket jeans, but I still don't think I could walk down, and I don't think anyone would notice that unless they were also interested in fashion.
Yeah. My ultimate goal is that someone will tell my girlfriend that they like the way I dress, and she'll tell me.
Nice.
Right.
They won't come up to me and tell me that, because then it gets really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So that's the
so-
fantasy you're into right now.
Thank you.
So I'll say like one thing, like first, the easiest way to take a compliment, if you're like, I get, I don't know what to say when people mention like how I dress. Just say thank you. Just say thank
Go
you.
ahead. Kiyoshi, go ahead.
Oh,
He was going.
anyway, so like two things about like compliments, right? So like
Mhm.
when someone compliments you, if you're not sure how to take a compliment or like what to say, just say thank you
Yeah.
and just move
Yeah.
on past it.
I figured that out now, but like in high school,
Yeah,
I don't know,
it's
in high
like for
school, I
people
was
that
still-
don't know. And then like
Yeah.
the other thing
Yeah.
I would say too is like, let's say you didn't used to dress up or like whatever, and you started like to give a damn about like how you dress and taking more active interest in it, and you're worried about what people will say, like coworkers or friends or what family, whatever, and they bring it up. It's like I think there's like a fear that's built, like, oh, they're gonna say something, or I'm dressing weird now. I'm not like the person they remember. When people ask you, oh, what's up with this? Like, just say
What's up with
exactly
that?
why you started doing it. I want to look cooler. I want to look better. Like, I decided I didn't like the way I looked.
Yeah.
It's like no different than getting a different haircut, like, or changing up your facial hair, or getting a tattoo. I don't know, because you want to look better. Like, because you that makes you look better and feel better.
Amen.
It's no different than any of those other very normal things that human beings participate in. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. I think that's. You guys can hear me now, right? I'm
I
back.
can hear you.
right?
You sound good.
Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you.
oh,
Get
thank
back,
God.
baby.
I was
That was
popping in.
like a major lag when you were like, "Go ahead, Kiyoshi."
No, go ahead, Kiyoshi. What do you think you're doing, old sport? No, I agree completely. I mean, to go back what we were talking about earlier, as Spencer was saying, because I couldn't talk because my internet was going out. I guess the Spectrum thing finally hit me. But the idea of dressing up and Spencer saying that he wouldn't stand up. I think I wouldn't stand out either. I'm wearing a fucking like button-up shirt and jeans. Like that's all I'm, and a bucket hat. No one's gonna really take a notice of that. Even if I was like walking in Target, I don't think anyone would be like, "Whoa, look at that guy." I feel like if I was wearing if I was baped out, maybe people would see it. Or if I was wearing a fucking like a fucking morning dress, and I think there are ways that we've discussed off air how we would be able to pull that off. But I feel like it's about wearing those clothes, I think, and even if it is a quote fashionable choice, to kind of just have like a slumpy I don't care attitude to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that before I get into that, I would say like I think there's a couple outfits that I definitely wore to stand out. Like I think when I went to like LACMA for the evening event, Spencer wore like a barber jacket, like a corduroy jacket. He was very rugged Ivy, kind of dressed up normal, whatever. But I wore a dinner jacket and a beret because I was like, okay, this is kind of a fun outfit, and it was cool. I got a couple compliments, but that's like an event I would like dress up at. I think at Dapper Day I wore a beret with a chocolate corduroy suit and a Terrasol vest. It's kind of extra. I probably wouldn't wear that, if I was just hanging out with my friends, but because the event was something and I was on a panel, like it makes sense to kind of stand out a little bit. So. But on a regular basis, even though like I could be wearing, typically I wear again gray pants and a brown jacket. I'm not wearing a fucking bow tie with a contrast club collar shirt and like a fedora. I've moved past those days, so I don't have to worry. At least I think about standing out very often. And if I do wear stuff, I think I carry myself in a way that doesn't call attention to myself. I'm not walking out prancing like a fucking
So smug.
reindeer. Yeah, so smug.
Reindeer.
Right. Yeah.
Guys, I'm wondering if there's a fundamental difference between the way we would evaluate clothing and its quote-unquote coolness
100%.
versus the way a regular person would.
100%.
Because when we... Yeah, because so the way I'm thinking about it is when we evaluate, like we're looking at suits, for example, what makes this suit a cool suit versus what makes this suit a bad suit. We're looking at details. We're looking at like lapel width or pick stitching or lack thereof pick stitching or whatever.
That no one else would
Details
probably
like
notice.
that. But
Yeah.
for regular guys, they don't notice details. They notice the type of clothing. So what what is cool and what's not to them is the type of clothing itself.
I don't know. I
So-
think that
Right.
what's cool and what's not to them is like the person wearing it mostly.
So to use specific
help
examples though, the blue zone you're wearing, which is I guess shorter than what you could get these days, but no one's going to care about that because
No.
in people's minds they judge it as a zip up short jacket, which is a thing, and they can't really tell the difference because they can't tell details.
Right, yeah, just a word, yeah.
But for suits, a lot of people have it. I'm not saying this is universal. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who appreciate suits who aren't into stuff we're into. But
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of them, they just look at the suit, and it doesn't matter what details it has. They don't know that it's Ivy. They don't know. They really don't. They just see a suit, and it's automatically this thing to them. The same way that we would judge a suit for having flat, skinny, lifeless lapels, they would judge a suit being a suit in the same way.
Right.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and that's probably what they are. What people are talking about too fashionable. You know, it's out again. It's outside the norm. They probably mean it's a little too dressed up, or maybe I also think it's also like wide leg pants and like when white socks or fucking wearing sneakers or raw hemming stuff. Like it's always like a little bit different. That is out of the norm. But I mean, to what
I would
we just
place
said, I don't
those
think-
guys though as a sub level between total fashion noob and fashion enthusiast. No.
Yeah,
So to me the guy who complains about wide fitting chinos, he's not completely clueless. He knows about style, but he's not particularly into it. And for whatever reason, which we may have discussed before, he's decided that 2007 is the ideal time for menswear, and everything is measured based off that.
Right.
But he's not clueless about menswear.
Well,
he
yeah,
doesn't
no, I
know
know,
something.
but that's what I'm saying, because again, the only time you get these kinds of comments are from people like that. You don't get it from fucking people off the street. You get it from a guy who is used to wearing Aldo shoes with a fucking like a tan Aldo shoe with a blue, like a light
a bright
blue
blue suit.
skinny suit. Yeah, and those are the guys who are like, "Whoa, wait, you're wearing wide legs. You're standing like that's crazy,
Kinda
man.
sucked
Like,
on
what
that.
are you doing?" So it's like
go to the
it's
tailor
always,
and
it's
get
always
them properly
weird.
fitted.
It's so weird that those are the people that latch on to these quote,
Yeah, if I were to
too
describe those
fashionable.
people in a particularly uncharitable manner, I'd say they're people who know stuff, but not nearly enough to know what they're saying is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean it's all knowledge and no substance, right?
It's a
That's
it's a
basically-
mid-level. You know the technical details, but you haven't lived it, shall we say? You don't understand. You just know.
Yeah,
the technical.
exactly. But I mean, so to go to what you were saying about, the fact that we are wearing a suit could be seen as crazy to some, because some people who wear chino shorts, Breton striped tees, and white sneakers, even though that's still kind of quote fashionable, wearing a suit in general, and then therefore messing with the classic stuff. Not talking about lapels, but like a higher waist. Some people, regular fashion people who are just getting new to it will notice a higher rise, right? Because that's what people talk about.
Yeah.
They'll say, "Don't do high rise, don't do pleats, don't do cuffs on your pants," whatever. And so that was what people noticed. But it's weird that's what stands out, because obviously, like we just said, no one's like regular people aren't going to notice that. It's always going to be these people, and even if you count the regular off the road people, off the street people, and the beginners, they don't care either. They're just making it a case in order for them to not do that thing. No one really is going to matter that you are having those details, other than the fact that you are just wearing a suit. And that, I don't think, is being quote too fashionable. It's more just formality levels or whatever. But then that's where the rule of cool, at least in terms of how you present yourself, play into it. Because as Kiyoshi said, like, what matters is just how cool you are. And Spencer also said that too, where it just depends on your vibe, right? And if we can talk about that now, but how do you reconcile being quote too fashionable? Because a lot of us will make choices that are maybe not fashionable, but bolder to some people, to other than others. How do you find yourself pulling that off? Because I think all of us just kind of
I just
right?
wear the clothes. Like, it's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
that easy.
Yeah. I mean, Kiyoshi wears suits, t-shirts, and loafers, right? I mean, that's kind of like a quote fashion thing. But how do you reconcile that in your head, Kiyoshi?
So one of the ways I do it is, I mean, I didn't just decide one day to try it. It was more, I've seen other people do it, and I got more and more comfortable with the idea.
Right.
And tried it with some of the t-shirts I had. I'm like, okay, why does this t-shirt not work? Why does this one seem to work on this guy? And later on, I kind of discovered, well, what makes it work is if the t-shirt usually is solid, tone on tone, maybe more of a knit rather than like a jersey, stuff like that just kind of adds, or like the neckline is a little bit nicer. All those things, kind of like thinking about the details of it and like what makes a more quote unquote fashionable fit work versus, I just threw on, a t-shirt, from my drawer underneath this suit. Of course, this is now t-shirt with a suit. And there's a reason why, in my mind, that doesn't work versus why another thing might work. So for me, it's just about thinking about the thing I want to accomplish, seeing how other people pulled it off, and then trying it myself and saying, being pretty brutally honest with myself, like, did I pull it off? Did it work? I think a lot of people kind of don't want to be self-critical enough, or they're afraid of like failing in front of other people through that process.
That could be what they're talking about when they're talking about fashionable.
Say what?
No, I'm saying that could be what they're referring to. Like, they don't want to be perceived as too fashionable for that reason of failing.
Yeah, and I understand that, but it's also kind of like there's a bunch of stuff that I think we can all look back on our entire lives and think, oh, I don't need to do that, or I don't want to do that. Or like, I think the easy example is like taking the training wheels off your bike, right? Because you're like, I've got this perfectly good bike and I can go anywhere I want with these training wheels and I'm not going to fall. And I don't have, why can't I just have training wheels until the day I die? And well, you know what? Turns out you can take off those training wheels and ride a bike like a normal person and
still die someday.
That'll allow you to do other things. I don't know too much about biking. Maybe this analogy is falling apart. But
no, it's
well, I think there's something important you're saying in that.
Go
ahead,
MJ.
I was gonna say, well, it's related, but not related. It's a good analogy because you do have more control over your bicycle as well as your speed, and
you can
it's
take
cool.
a sharper corner.
So it's like it does make sense to be like, okay, I have quote unquote more control over my clothes or my style now that I took the training wheels off.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
And also, I think it's important to remember that the cliff you're riding on the edge of when you experiment with fashion.
Wait, you're riding really a bike off a cliff?
Oh my god!
You're riding on the edge of it. Hopefully, you
oh
don't
my
fall.
god!
It's like
for X Games.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
You only live. Yeah, people who daredevils. But anyway, the cliff, the proverbial cliff that you're riding on the edge of, when you experiment with fashion and try to become quote unquote a more fashionable person, it's not that high. That's one thing people have to remember. In the MFA, if you look at them discussing how a certain cut of suit has this impression versus that impression, I feel like they're under the mistaken impression that the stakes are really high when it comes to clothing, when in fact they really aren't.
Mm-hmm.
That is not to say that. Yeah, that is not to say that there are no stakes. There are people who take an unnatural amount of offense to you not being appropriately dressed, and those people would be a lot of members of my immediate family. Yeah. So that does happen. You can't discount it completely, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really unimportant. You really are riding on the edge of a 2-foot cliff. Even if you fall off, you're not really going to get hurt. It's not going to affect your career, your work, your life, your ability to get a girlfriend, as some people might. Some mistaken people might suspect, I think, given what they say.
You know where there are a lot of stakes in menswear? Matt Hranick's Meat Locker.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Right.
Yeah, little menswear joke for you guys. I'll be here all week. I'll be
Yeah.
here Saturday.
Right.
MJ,
Right.
you said you were excited about this topic. Why don't you give us some of your thoughts about it? Like being too fashionable, standing out, you know.
That was all MJ's thoughts.
Every time. Did
When
you
you
step
tell him
away?
not
I
to
guess you
come on
can't even
mic,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess he finally listened to me
Yeah.
after all this time.
Pavlovian learning. It's finally been conditioned
Yeah.
into him, and just when you need him, you know.
You know, I mean,
What a
I think so. One thing that to go off of what Kiyoshi said about trying things, I think that's extremely important because it's like art, right? Like to go back and everything, to about the Inspo albums as well. It's like neoclassical representative art is great and it is technically good. But if we keep having books about it, we're gonna run out of things to say because it's been done. It's been done for like hundreds of years. The thing that's always pushing the pushing envelope is whatever's coming out now, and of course relating that and comparing it to classical representative art and etc. is what gives us how to study art and how to create new concepts and everything. And so I mean, basics are always going to be a thing, but it's like how you use as a springboard, and I don't get that how we can have this idea that the past is we're so beholden to it, In the wise words of Kylo Ren, it's supposed to be let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
It's an arrogant viewpoint to hold, I think. If you are a person who insists that there only be one style, that means you think that there's one style that represents the pinnacle of all fashion that has ever been and ever will be.
And the people who say that, the people who say that have like the least amount of authority on that subject at all.
Right.
I mean, it's just kind of.
Well, as Jeremy pointed out, the Dunning-Kruger effect in full show. That is what it is.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is also kind of it's the idea that this is like art, and people just refuse to look at clothing as art or any kind of a creative expression. It's like it has to be practical because you wear it or whatever, which it can. My whole thing, I guess one of my favorite things, and Al just knows that it can be both. You can accomplish both things. And people don't realize that. At least these people who have these opinions are kind of like that. It's unfortunate.
Well, it's the fashion versus clothing difference, right? Because clothing can be argued as practical. We need clothes if it's too cold to keep us warm.
Of course.
But fashion is inherently it's an art. I don't see how people combine the two and mix them up.
They're not.
I mean, because it's like a quote I shared earlier today or last night, which is kind of funny because it kind of led into what I saw this morning with that whole Reddit thing. Was that I read an essay on Medium, because someone linked it or whatever, and it said like it was like about how to apply masculinity to create a great men's wardrobe. And it was really weird. And of course, the quote in it, let me read it off of my story, says, men's trousers, for instance, became high and lower waisted as well as fuller and slimmer. When that happens, men who wore trousers that would be in the middle of the extremes never looked out of place. If they fitted well, look better than the fashionistas of the day. But the thing is, these people who write like this never talk about who the best dressed people are, because if these people talk about Fred Astaire's style changed from the 30s to the 50s.
Yeah.
You talk about Cary Grant's style changed from the 30s to the 50s. Steve
I think it's ridiculous to say that they were fashionable in their era, because what it sounds like to me is that they were what's the saying? Jack of all trades, but master of none. They were equal. They were an equal amount of unfashionable for different reasons, depending on what era they were in. If indeed such a person existed, but I don't think has anyone ever brought up an example of someone who actually did that, who actually was in the middle of fashion? Because people say
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, right? It's a hypothetical. It doesn't. There is no one like that.
I mean, famous people of the day are always going to be fashionable people.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
You can say, "Oh yeah, good. Your grandfather, who was like a coal miner, was very middle of the road," but
Yeah, he might have been more consistent than a
Like,
Fifth Avenue
great.
clothes horse who could buy new wardrobe.
But then he
every
probably
season.
was the kind of person who was like, you read the apparel arts or you read like the GQ, whatever, and you're like, oh, well, that's something new I gotta try. I mean, that's why when you look at these people who have bought like, vintage or whatever, they have ties from like the 30s to the 50s because they were like, whoa, my foulard ties are out of style. I got to get these bold 50s ties now. Like that literally happened back in the day. You see all these. Even Miles Davis has gone through a lot of different styles.
Oh yeah,
that's even crazier.
Genres, yeah.
It's like these people make all these weird ideas of like what is like the most what is fashion nirvana, what is the pure form of this that doesn't go on trends. But the thing is, no one's ever done that. I'm sure if you took, that's why you have like those pictures of Brad Pitt in the 90s. He doesn't look like Brad Pitt now, right? Like that's like it's always going to be the case.
But why not? The 90s were so good.
And see, I can't wait for people to. Well, it happens nowadays. Now, where people literally say, "Why can't we be like in 2015 when Slim Fit was king?" It's just when we were talking a couple of times ago about like why being basic is bad. The whole like slim jean with like V-neck sweater with like an OCBD and like combat boot or like a work boot is an inherently dated look already by now. I think when you look at what the young people are wearing,
I feel like it was dated the moment they did it.
Oh yeah, well as soon as it became like that, it was like already like the whole Goodyear welt broad denim thing has already like been out of like style now.
Yeah.
And that is
with these non-fashion people is they're just like 10 years behind.
Yeah,
they're fashionable. They're just too slow.
They're not unfashionable. They're a particular kind of fashion. I think yes, that's right.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there.
And I think it's just the fact of now, like again with Twitter, with Instagram, and everything, is that they're getting in this kind of reinforced bubble that they are correct, right? And of course, as we talked about, one of our first streams was about what women find attractive, where we literally read a list of comments. Literally a whole thing where women, all they said was a fitted button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up.
And that was like it.
And that goes to what I was saying about people not knowing about details at all. It's about the way we'd evaluate details. They evaluate categories of clothing. So button-up shirts are, I guess, dressy and cool, and all suits are inherently uncool for these kind of people.
I love when people have a work.
No, I feel like most of the
casual wardrobe.
Most it's like no offense to very basic people, but I feel like most very basic people love suits and love saying things like, the male equivalent of lingerie is a well-fitted suit.
Oh, God,
that's a thing that normal people love to say.
Yeah. I don't know if that's normal people though. I feel like that's
basic knowledge there.
No.
Hey, dude, subtle Asian fashion, dude. I'm telling you, all these things. I'm telling you, dude. I see it all the time.
Ethan knows.
Okay, fine.
I mean, I have a lot of different friends. That's not a flex. I'm just saying that again, most of my IRL friends, again, outside of this very niche group of us right here, are regular people. They're not. I mean, I don't want to call them basic, but of course they're not going to more in what all this said. They're not going to notice the details. They're not going to know what Americana is. They're not going to know what Ivy is. All they're going to know is that's cool. That's not.
Okay,
right?
Ethan. Then maybe I misspoke when I said all suits are considered by some people to be bad.
I know.
But is the category still?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong in that a suit could be dweebish or whatever.
But moving on from that, are the categories still rather broad though? So maybe the average guy does think a suit is good, but for them a suit is a navy or charcoal, dark grey worsted suit. Tweed suits are their own we would put tweed suits in the same category, but they wouldn't. Tweed suits for them are a different category. Brand suits are a different category. I think there's a fundamental difference between the way normies think about this stuff versus the way we do, and it causes a lot of confusion because it's a really fundamental